Pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, sits heavy in your chest, and poisons every breath you take. That's what it felt like the night I first realized I would always be the second choice in my own family. When I was little, Grandpa's garage was my church. While other kids danced in tutus or painted watercolors, I was on the cold cement floor handing him wrenches, watching oil drip like black tears into a pan. He'd wink at me and say, "Madison, a car will never lie to you the way people do." I didn't understand then, but I do now. By the time I was 29, I had carved my own life out of sheer exhaustion. 70-hour weeks at a financial firm in New York, meals eaten from Tupperware, laughter traded for late nights. And for what? For a promise. A promise that one day I would own the car Grandpa once showed me. A 1969 Corvette Stingray, rally red, curves like fire in motion. That car wasn't a vehicle. It was my identity stitched into steel, my declaration that every sacrifice had meant something. When I finally bought it, $85,000 wired from my savings account to a stranger in Wisconsin, I cried harder than I had at Grandpa's funeral. Driving it home, I whispered, "We did it, Grandpa. We did it." But dreams have enemies. Sometimes those enemies wear the faces of people who should protect you. When Caroline, my boss, told me I was flying to Seoul for 3 weeks to lead a career-defining pitch, I felt both joy and dread. Joy because I had earned it. Dread because I knew I couldn't leave the Stingray in a city where car thieves were getting bolder by the day. So I did what seemed safe. I drove to my parents' home in suburban Massachusetts. Neat lawns, mailboxes with little flags, neighbors who waved politely. Behind that picture-perfect frame hid a truth I had spent years ignoring. My parents never saw me. "Not really. Still a beauty," Dad murmured when I pulled into the driveway, his hand grazing the hood as if he had earned the right to touch it. Mom stood at the door, dish towel in hand, eyes sharp despite her smile. "Madison, what a surprise. Staying for dinner?" I explained my Seoul trip, my request to keep the car in their garage. I gave Dad typed instructions, begged them not to drive it, not to let anyone near it. He chuckled like I was a silly child. "It's just a car, kiddo." Number. It was never just a car. But they never understood. That night at dinner, Lily, my younger sister, the eternal princess, sighed dramatically about her friend's Mediterranean cruise. "I just wish I could go," she moaned, manicured nails tapping her phone screen. "It's humiliating being the only one left behind." Mom's hand stroked her back. Dad promised to look at the numbers. I swallowed my fury with a mouthful of dry chicken, reminded yet again that Lily's wants were always needs, while my needs were dismissed as luxuries. I left for Seoul the next morning, Ethan swapping his replica Stingray into their garage while my real one was hidden safely in Brooklyn. I boarded the plane with cautious relief. For once, I thought, maybe I had outsmarted fate. Seoul was grueling and glorious. I worked, I won, I stood on top of the world. By the end of the 3 weeks, I carried with me not just a new job title in sight, but also the sweet thought of sliding back behind that wheel, the engine roaring like a heartbeat I had missed too long. But when the taxi pulled into my parents' driveway, when the garage door creaked open, my body broke before my mind caught up. The space was empty. No red shimmer, no chrome glint, just Dad's sedan, Mom's SUV, and a silence so violent it drowned out my pulse. I stumbled inside, suitcase forgotten. "Where's my car?" My voice cracked like glass under a hammer. Mom's lips curved into a smile that cut deeper than any blade. "Thanks to your car," she said sweetly. "Your sister is having the time of her life." In that moment, my world didn't just tilt. It collapsed. The betrayal wasn't whispered anymore. It screamed. And all I could feel was pain so sharp, it promised revenge. There's a silence that doesn't heal, it infects. When I stepped into my parents' living room, suitcase abandoned at the door, the silence oozed like poison through the air. Dad sat in his recliner, a newspaper trembling slightly in his hands. Mom arranged cookies on a plate she hadn't baked, face carved into a mask of control. I didn't sit. I couldn't. "Where is my car?" My voice cracked, my throat already raw. Dad cleared his throat. "Madison, something came up while you were gone. Where is my car? Mom turned, chin lifted like a queen defending her throne. And then, with a smile that still burns in my nightmares, she said, "Thanks to your car, your sister is having the time of her life." It wasn't just a sentence, it was a knife, and she twisted it with every syllable. I staggered back, clutching the wall. You sold it. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Lily was going through a rough time. All her friends were on this cruise. It would have crushed her. You sold my car. My voice rose, sharper now, fueled by the fire clawing up my chest. Mom scoffed, dismissive. You make good money. You can buy another one. But Lily, she needed this opportunity. She's building her future. Networking, relationships, things you clearly don't value. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from rage too big for my body. That car was my future. That car was Grandpa. That car was 5 years of sacrifice you never respected. It's just a car, Mom snapped, venom lacing every word. Family matters more than things. Number. My laugh was hollow, bitter. Family doesn't mean stealing. Family doesn't mean lying. Family doesn't mean betraying your own child. Their faces were a blur, Dad's guilt masked with excuses. Mom's pride refusing to crack. And in that blur, I saw the truth. I wasn't their daughter in that moment. I was a resource, a bank account, a sacrifice to keep their precious Lily smiling on a cruise ship, sipping cocktails bought with my blood. My phone buzzed. Ethan, pulled up. Where's the stingray? The words blurred through my tears. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. And then clarity. The replica. The switch. The car they sold wasn't mine. The rage inside me hardened into something colder, sharper. I almost smiled, but it wasn't joy. It was the calm before a storm that would swallow us all. You didn't just steal from me, I whispered. You committed fraud. You sold something that wasn't even yours to sell. Mom's bravado faltered. Dad's newspaper slipped from his hands. You think this is about family? I said, voice shaking with fury. This is about betrayal. And I swear to God you will pay for it. The room spun with their shock, their fear. But underneath it all, I felt something else awakening inside me. The first pulse of vengeance. This wasn't just their crime anymore. It was their reckoning. The betrayal should have broken me, but instead it forged me. When Ethan stepped through that door, confusion carved across his face, I realized the truth. My parents hadn't stolen my stingray. They had stolen his replica. And in that cruel twist of fate, I felt a surge of power rise from somewhere deep, somewhere they had never been able to crush. I turned to Mom and Dad, my tears gone, replaced by ice. You didn't just betray me, I said slowly. You stole from him. Ethan's jaw tightened. $30,000. My car. My property. You forged documents. Faked signatures. Falsified a VIN. Do you have any idea what that means? Dad stammered, face ashen. We thought. You thought wrong, I cut him off. Ignorance doesn't erase a felony. The word hung in the air like thunder. Felony. For the first time, Mom's confidence cracked. Her hands trembled as she clutched the arm of the couch. You can't mean that, she whispered. We're family. Family doesn't forge my signature. Family doesn't commit fraud. Family doesn't sell what was never theirs. They shrank in their seats. But I stood taller, stronger. For years, I had been the overlooked daughter, the dependable one, the resilient one, the one who could carry the weight so Lily could float. But in that moment, I was no longer their scapegoat. I was their judge. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Hello? This is Richard Collins, a man's voice said. I bought a Corvette from your parents. The title transfer isn't going through. Can we talk? I looked at them, Mom pale, Dad trembling, and felt something shift inside me. For once, the fear was theirs, not mine. Yes, Mr. Collins, I said evenly. There has been a misunderstanding. I'll call you back shortly. When I hung up, the silence was suffocating. Mom finally broke it, her voice desperate. Madison, you have to help us. If this comes out, if he goes to the police, we'll lose everything. You should have thought of that before you sold Ethan's car, I spat. Please. Tears streaked her face, but I felt nothing. Not pity, Not guilt, only clarity. You wanted me to sacrifice. You wanted me to bend, to give, to disappear for Lily's sake. But now you're the ones who will pay. Every cent, every signature, every sleepless night. This is your debt. Ethan's voice was steady, unforgiving. You'll repay me, with interest, or the police will take over. Dad's lips trembled. Where? Where will we get that kind of money? That's not my problem, I said coldly. It's yours. You created this mess. You fix it. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in on them, not me. For once, I was the storm, and they were the ones drowning. I had walked into that house a daughter, begging for love. I walked out a woman who had finally seen the truth. Love without respect is just chains. And I had broken mine. The reckoning had begun. The next afternoon, Ethan and I sat in a glass tower in Manhattan, 30 floors above the city. Outside, New York hummed with indifference, but inside Alicia Grant's office, the world narrowed to 3 people and one brutal truth. My parents had crossed a line that no apology could erase. Alicia, sharp in a navy suit, didn't sugarcoat it. She flipped through the forged documents, my faked signature, the fraudulent bill of sale, the VIN that didn't match Ethan's replica, and looked up at us with eyes hard as steel. Your parents, she said flatly, committed grand theft, auto, and wire fraud. Minimum. Each carries up to 15 years. If the buyer, Mr. Collins, goes to the authorities before this is resolved, the DA will have no choice but to prosecute. The words sliced through me like broken glass. 15 years. Prison cells. My parents in orange jumpsuits. For a second, grief pressed down on my chest. Hot and suffocating. But then anger rose and burned it away. They had chosen this. They had written their own sentence when they betrayed me. They'll never survive prison, I whispered. Alicia leaned forward. Then you need to decide. Do you want them punished by the state, or do you want control? There is a third option, private restitution. You demand repayment in full, plus damages, plus a notarized admission of guilt. No police, as long as they comply. But if they resist, you hold all the cards. Her words lit a fire inside me. This wasn't mercy. This was strategy. A battlefield drawn in contracts and signatures instead of blood. Ethan's jaw clenched. They'll fight it. They'll cry, beg, manipulate. They always do. I know, I said, my voice trembling with fury and resolve. But this time I'm not bending, they pay. Or they burn. Alicia nodded, pulling out a legal pad. Then here's how it works. Step 1, unwind the sale. Mr. Collins gets his money back, plus compensation for his trouble. Step 2, Ethan is repaid in full $30,000 plus damages. Step 3, your parents sign a notarized apology acknowledging theft, fraud, and promising never to interfere with your property again. With that, you keep this contained. Without it, the law takes over. I stared at the yellow paper filling with bullet points, each one a nail in the coffin of the family I thought I had. My heart ached, but my hands didn't shake. This was revenge, but not petty revenge. This was justice forged in fire. Alicia studied me. Are you prepared for what comes next? They'll see this as betrayal. They'll say you destroyed the family. I almost laughed. They destroyed the family the second they sold that car. All I'm doing is burying what's already dead. The office fell quiet, just the scratch of Alicia's pen. For the first time in days, I felt the ground steady under my feet. The power wasn't in their hands anymore. It was in mine. As we left the building, the city air felt different, sharp, alive, brimming with momentum. Ethan took my hand. This is it, he said. I nodded. They wanted to play with my life. Now we'll play with theirs. And in that moment I swore. My parents would repay every dollar, every sleepless night, every tear. I would make sure betrayal had a cost so high, they would never dare cross me again. This wasn't just revenge, it was rebirth. The storm broke on a Wednesday night. My parents showed up at Ethan's apartment, hollow-eyed, clothes wrinkled, as if guilt had already started its slow rot. But guilt wasn't enough. Tonight, they would face judgment. I didn't let them inside immediately. I made them wait in the hallway, clutching each other like terrified children. When I finally opened the door, the silence was thick, heavy with everything unsaid. "Sit," I ordered. My voice wasn't a daughter's voice anymore. It was steel. They sat on Ethan's couch like defendants waiting for a verdict. Ethan laid out the folder Alicia had prepared. Documents, repayment schedules, a draft apology letter already formatted for notarization. The sound of paper hitting wood was louder than thunder. Dad's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. Mom's lips tightened, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "This is extreme," she whispered. "Extreme?" My laugh was sharp, bitter. "What's extreme is forging my signature. What's extreme is selling Ethan's car and wiring the money away like criminals. What's extreme is smiling in my face while my dream was being dismantled for Lily's vacation." Her eyes flared. "Don't drag your sister into this. She didn't sign anything." "She didn't have to," Ethan cut in, voice flat. "She was the beneficiary. She drank champagne while we bled." Right on cue, the door opened. Lily walked in, suitcase in hand, skin still bronzed from the Mediterranean sun, hair styled, designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She looked every inch the princess. "What's going on?" she asked, tossing her bag down casually. I turned, fury spiking so hot I nearly shook. "What's going on? You're sipping cocktails while Mom and Dad forged crimes for you. That's what." "That." Her smile faltered. "Oh, come on, Maddie. Don't be so dramatic. They just helped me. You can always buy another." "Finish that sentence," I snapped, "and I swear you'll regret it." The room froze. Lily's smugness cracked. For the first time, she looked nervous. I shoved the folder toward her. $55,000. That's what it takes to undo this mess. 50 to repay Mr. Collins, 5 for damages. Mom and Dad are taking out a home equity loan. You're putting in 10 from your savings, and Mom is selling her jewelry to cover the rest." Mom gasped. "My jewelry? That's my—" "Your sacrifice," I cut her off. "Don't you dare talk to me about family sacrifice unless you're ready to bleed for it." Dad's shoulders slumped, as if the weight of decades of favoritism finally crushed him. We'll do it. We'll take the loan." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. Why am I being punished? I didn't sell the car. No, I said coldly. You just manipulated them into it. You let them wreck their lives so you could play queen for a week. You're not a child anymore, Lily. Actions have consequences. Her sobs filled the room, but they were thin, self-pitying. I remembered every birthday she got a party while I got silence, every designer dress while I wore hand-me-downs. And suddenly, her tears felt like justice. This isn't fair, she screamed. Neither was 5 years of 70-hour weeks to buy a car you treated like a credit card. I shot back. Neither was selling Grandpa's legacy without a second thought. Fair left this house a long time ago. The papers lay on the table like a blade, gleaming under the light. Ethan leaned forward, voice low, deadly calm. You sign, you pay. Or we go to the police. Those are your only options. The room shook with their sobs, their excuses, their fear. But for the first time, I wasn't the one drowning. I was the tide pulling them under. This was the reckoning, and I would make sure every scar they carved into me was repaid in kind. The coffee shop in Connecticut felt too quiet, too ordinary for the storm about to detonate inside. Sunlight slanted through tall windows, catching the silver in Mr. Collins' hair as he stirred his coffee with mechanical precision. His eyes, though, were sharp, calculating, suspicious. When we arrived, my parents walked like prisoners to their own sentencing. Mom's lips were pressed into a thin line. Dad's hands trembled as he clutched a folder. Lily trailed behind, her face pale, stripped of cruise glow vanity. Ethan and I walked in last, side by side, not as children but as prosecutors. Mr. Collins looked up. So, You're Madison. His voice was polite, but cold enough to freeze glass. And these are the people who sold me a stolen car? Mom flinched. Dad tried to smile, but it broke on his face. Sir, we thought… Number! Collins slammed his cup onto the table. The sound cracked through the cafe, silencing even the barista. You didn't think. You forged documents. You falsified ownership. You sold me a car that never belonged to you. My parents shrank under his fury. For once, they had no script, no defense. I leaned forward, my voice steady as iron. Mr. Collins, here is our solution. You'll receive a full refund of the $50,000 you paid. In addition, $5,000 for damages and inconvenience. Once the transfer is complete, the car will be returned to Ethan, its rightful owner. Collins raised an eyebrow. And if I refuse? Ethan spoke, low and lethal. Then we go to the police. Fraud, theft, wire transfers, your name will be dragged into an investigation. You're innocent, but the process will be hell. This way, you're made whole. Quickly. Lie. Collins studied us, then gave a short nod. Fine, but I want the wire in my account before I release the car. Done, I said, and I turned to my parents. Their faces were masks of despair. Mom's eyes glistened. Dad's jaw worked like he was swallowing shards of glass. 55,000, I said coldly. Home, equity loan, jewelry, Lily's savings, every dollar you've hoarded, every indulgence you thought you were owed, it goes here. Mom's voice cracked. My rings, my necklace, Madison, please. You called it family sacrifice when you took my car, I snapped. Now it's your turn to sacrifice. Lily burst into tears, clutching her designer purse like it could shield her. Why do I have to pay? I didn't sign anything. I turned on her with fire in my eyes. Because you were the reason. Because you've been carried your whole life while I bled. You will pay, Lily. And maybe, for the first time, you'll feel what responsibility tastes like. Voey. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Ethan pulled out the final sheet of paper from Alicia's folder, the notarized apology. Read it, he commanded. Dad's voice shook as he obeyed, reading aloud in the cafe. We, Thomas and Elaine Clark, admit to theft, fraud, and betrayal of trust. We acknowledge that our actions caused harm to Ethan and Madison. We promise never again to interfere with their property or decisions. Signed, dated, notarized. No, each word was a stone dropped into the pit of their pride. Each sentence stripped them of the power they had abused. By the end, Mom was sobbing openly, her hands shaking so hard she could barely hold the pen. Sign it, I said. And they did. With every stroke of ink, the scales tipped. For years, they had dismissed me, belittled me, stolen from me in the name of family. Now, for the first time, they were forced to kneel to the truth. Mr. Collins tucked the document into his briefcase, satisfied. I'll expect the funds by tomorrow, he said curtly, then stood and walked out, leaving the weight of humiliation hanging over the table like smoke. My parents sat broken, Lily hiccuping through tears. But me? I felt nothing but the sharp, cold satisfaction of justice. This wasn't vengeance whispered in secret. This was vengeance signed, sealed, and notarized. The court had no judge, no jury, just truth, and the verdict was ours. The signatures were still drying on the apology letter when the real war began. Back at my apartment, the four of us sat around the dining table. No lawyers, no buyers, just blood. And for the first time, there was nowhere to hide. Lily's mascara streaked her cheeks, her sobs jagged, ugly. Why am I the one being punished? She wailed. I didn't forge anything. I didn't sell anything. I just wanted one good thing in my life. My laugh was sharp, bitter. One good thing? You've had everything handed to you since the day you were born. Birthday parties I never got. Designer clothes while I wore scraps. A brand new car at graduation while I begged for college fee waivers. And now a luxury cruise paid for with fraud. Her sobs grew louder. That's not my fault. I didn't ask to be the favorite. No, I said coldly, but you took every gift, every indulgence, Every time they bent the rules for you and you never once questioned it. You let them ruin themselves for you. And you let them ruin me. Mom reached across the table, her hand trembling. Madison, stop. Don't tear her apart like this. I jerked my arm away. Don't you dare defend her. Don't you dare. You created this. Every time you told me to be strong while you coddled her weakness, every time you excused her mistakes and dismissed my pain, you made her this way. You made all of this possible. Dad's voice cracked, low and broken. She's right, Elaine. No. The room stilled. Mom's eyes widened. What? For years, Dad said, his voice shaking like a dam finally breaking. We thought we were protecting Lily, but all we did was cripple her. We gave her excuses instead of strength. We gave her shortcuts instead of discipline, and we robbed Madison of the respect she deserved. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Mom shook her head, denial bleeding from her lips. No, we just wanted to love her, to protect her. That wasn't love, I spat. That was favoritism dressed up as love, and it poisoned this family. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then Lily whispered, her voice small, fractured. So you love me more. Dad buried his face in his hands. We thought we did. But now, I don't even know if we understood what love meant. For once, Lily didn't look like a princess. She looked like a child staring at the ruins of her own kingdom. Her tears weren't just self-pity anymore. They were realization, and the sound of it was almost unbearable. Mom finally broke, sobbing into her hands. I thought I was doing what mothers should do, shielding, nurturing, but I see it now. I see what I took from you, Madison. I stole your chance to feel seen, to feel equal, to feel loved. I failed you. The words should have healed me. Instead, they ripped me open. Years of suppressed grief crashed through me, choking my throat. I slammed my fist against the table, rattling the plates. You didn't just fail me. You betrayed me. The silence after that felt like a graveyard. Everyone sat broken. Mom sobbing. Dad hollow. Lily destroyed. And me? For the first time, I wasn't drowning in their chaos. I was standing above it, breathing the fire they had tried to bury inside me. The collapse had come, and from its ashes, something new was waiting to rise. 1 week later, the wires cleared. Mr. Collins got his refund plus damages, and Ethan's replica was back in his garage where it belonged. The apology letter sat framed on my bookshelf, its notarized seal gleaming like a trophy. Proof that justice wasn't a dream, it was real, it was mine, and it had teeth. But the money wasn't the only price my parents paid. Mom's jewelry box was empty now, velvet cushions bare where diamonds once sparkled. Dad had taken on a weekend construction job. Calluses blooming across his soft palms. Lily had drained her savings account, her princess facade cracked, leaving a woman staring at the mirror for the first time without a safety net. For the first time in my life, I felt them bending to reality, bending to truth, and in that bend, there was space for something new to grow. Dinner was quiet, tense, but different. Dad placed a platter of roasted chicken on the table, his voice awkward but sincere. Henry's selling his old pickup. Thought maybe you and I could restore it together. The words stunned me. Not because of the truck, but because my father had finally offered to meet me on my ground. The garage. The grease. The place he'd always dismissed as unfeminine. My throat tightened, but I nodded. I'd like that. Mom pushed a gift bag toward Ethan. Inside was the title to his replica, professionally framed, with a handwritten note. Boundaries matter. We won't cross them again. Her handwriting shook, but the intent was steady. Even Lily surprised me. She came to the table in work clothes, no sequins, no designer logos. She whispered, almost shyly. I got a new job, entry, level, small agency downtown. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. For the first time, I saw her not as a rival, not as the golden child, but as someone trying to learn to walk without crutches. And me? I had changed too. Revenge had burned through me, but it hadn't destroyed me. It had carved me into something sharper, stronger, someone who could finally say no without guilt, who could demand respect without apology. A week later, I slid into the Stingray, again my Stingray, and took her onto the road by Lake Quannapowitt. The sun spilled gold across the hood, the engine purred like an old friend. Wind tangled my hair, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted. I felt alive. The car was still a machine, metal, rubber, glass, but it had become something more. A witness. To my pain. To my betrayal. To my vengeance. And now, to my rebirth. As the road unspooled before me, I whispered to the wind, boundaries are love, justice is love, and this is freedom. The Stingray roared in agreement. Family is supposed to be our safest place. The first arms that hold us, the first voices that tell us who we are. But for many of us, family can also be the place where the deepest wounds are carved. The truth is simple, but brutal. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones who betray us the most. Madison's journey is more than a story about a stolen car. It is about every child who has ever been overlooked, every sibling who has lived in the shadow of favoritism, every adult who has returned home only to find that home is not safe at all. The Corvette was not just steel and glass, it was years of sacrifice, discipline, and independence. When her parents sold it, they didn't just sell a car. They sold her dignity. And for a moment, Madison was destroyed. That is the pain phase, the first step. When betrayal comes from those closest to us, the grief feels unbearable. It shakes the ground under our feet. In American culture, we often hide pain behind polite smiles, Sunday dinners, or cheerful Facebook posts. But pain ignored only festers. Madison's pain demanded to be felt, and she let it burn. Then came the betrayal phase. Family loyalty was twisted into a weapon. Her parents justified theft in the name of love for Lily. Her sister shrugged off responsibility. Her aunt scolded her for daring to speak the truth. This is a reality many viewers will recognize. In American families, loyalty is often confused with silence. Don't air dirty laundry. Be the bigger person. Family helps family. But loyalty without respect is slavery. And Madison refused to be a slave. The awakening phase changed everything. When she realized the car sold was Ethan's replica, not her own, the power shifted. For once, she wasn't the victim. She was the one holding the truth like a sword. That moment of clarity is something we all must find. The recognition that betrayal doesn't have to define us. It can empower us. When boundaries are broken, we can draw them thicker, sharper, stronger. The revenge phase was not about cruelty. It was about justice. Madison could have pressed charges, could have watched her parents dragged into court in handcuffs. Instead, she chose controlled retribution. She demanded repayment, a notarized apology, restitution for Ethan, and accountability for Lily. In doing so, she used the tools of law and order contracts, signatures, notarization to replace chaos with consequences. For viewers in the US, this is a reminder: forgiveness does not mean letting people walk all over you. Forgiveness can coexist with firm boundaries and legal protection. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to enforce consequences. And then came the rebirth. The family was broken, but the collapse forced them to confront years of favoritism and denial. Dad admitted the truth. Mom faced her own failures. Lily, for the first time, had to stand on her own 2 feet. And Madison, no longer the overlooked daughter, emerged as a woman of steel, someone who could both demand justice and, in time, allow space for healing. So what are the lessons we carry from this story? 1. Boundaries are love. In American culture, we often confuse unconditional love with unconditional access. But love without boundaries is toxic. By forcing her parents to sign that apology and pay restitution, Madison was teaching them what love with boundaries looks like: respect, accountability, and safety. 2. Favoritism poisons families. Every parent in America who has favored one child over another should hear this story as a warning. Favoritism doesn't just spoil one child, it destroys trust for all of them. Equality, even in discipline, is an act of love. 3. Justice is not cruelty. Madison's revenge was precise. She didn't lash out blindly. She didn't burn bridges just to watch them collapse. She held her parents accountable in a way that gave them a path to redemption. In American life, where lawsuits and estrangements are common, this is a powerful reminder. Revenge can be justice when it's measured, fair, and leaves room for change. 4. Healing comes after truth. The therapy sessions, the shared dinners, the restored boundaries, all of it only became possible after the truth was spoken out loud. Families cannot heal from lies. They can only heal from the painful honesty that forces everyone to face themselves. 5. Your worth is not up for negotiation. Perhaps the greatest lesson Madison learned is that she didn't need her parents' approval to define her. Her worth wasn't in their eyes, their words, or their excuses. It was in the life she built, the sacrifices she made, the car she fought for, and the boundaries she finally drew. For viewers, this story may feel painfully familiar. Maybe your parents dismissed your passions. Maybe your sibling was always the chosen one. Maybe you've been told to forgive and forget, while carrying scars no one else could see. Madison's journey shows us another way. You don't have to forget, and forgiveness doesn't have to come without accountability. You can demand justice, enforce boundaries, and still leave space for healing. In the end, Madison drove her Stingray again, not just as a car, but as a symbol of rebirth. She had transformed betrayal into strength, vengeance into justice, and pain into wisdom. And that is something we all can do, whether or not we've ever owned a Corvette. So if you're watching this, ask yourself, where have you allowed betrayal to silence you? Where have you mistaken loyalty for chains? And most importantly, are you ready to draw the boundary that sets you free? Because sometimes, the greatest act of love you can give your family is to refuse to let them break you.